Colin from Ooredoo and Alex Sinclair from the GSMA. Would you guys like to come up on stage and we'll go through your presentations? Great. Come on up. Alex, have a seat. Alex, the chair's there. Sorry? Have a seat or whichever's speaking first.
I think you're speaking first.
Oh. Great. Okay, so we got an opportunity here from Ooredoo and probably have some slides from you, right? So would you like to start with that and kick it off?
Actually, it might be better if Alex starts first because it's surrounding more sort of the mobile connect rather than Ooredoo. So.
Great. Well, I got the slide projector. Hopefully they got your slides teed up, but we'll let you kick it off.
Okay, let's do it. So why are we here talking about identity is the first and obvious question. Well, if you look at how much time you're spending online these days, if you look at how much money you're transacting and spending online, if you look at how much data you're sharing through social networking, it's becoming really increasingly important to make sure that you have an easy, simple way to securely sort of validate your identity in cyberspace in order to be able to authorize transactions and access your digital assets. If you look at some of the people in the room, I don't think you're the typical demographic, but the average user is kind of in password hell. Apparently, average users have about 60 online accounts. That would be 60 usernames and passwords to look after. But guess what? They don't. They typically differentiate between about 10, because just to manage that number of passwords, and don't forget you're supposed to change them on a regular basis too, would be very difficult as well to do.
Right.
But there's that. Then there's the concerns that people have about online. So identity theft is a big one. If you look at the US Theft Resource Center, they publish statistics to say that about 10 million personal records have been disclosed this year alone in the US. And it's not just concerns about people are going to steal your identity, it's concerns about people who give away data for free. Now, I'm not naive. 61% of consumers are perfectly happy sharing data about themselves, their social network, if they know they're going to get some sort of benefit back. But there are issues around transparency and around control. Transparency in the sense of, do you really know who's collecting data about you and who they're sharing with and why?
Yeah.
And then control in the sense of, even if you did know, could you do anything about it? Or have you been lawyered? Those lovely T's and C's box that we all click I accept on.
Yep.
If you read the small print, it probably says you've just given away your house, your car, and your firstborn child, but everybody just says I accept because they don't read it. So there's really a strong need for this sort of thing, which is why within the GSMA, Mobile Connect is such a powerful initiative. We want to use your device as the obvious second factor for authentication. Yeah. It's something you have as well as something you know. It's something you always have, actually, and it's also one way to make it really easy. If you make it easy, customers will use it, they'll become acquainted to it, so that's pretty important as well. And we're working with carriers all over the world, like Ooredoo and Colin, and we're working with governments too for government services. You may not know this, but we actually have a US government grant, and we're doing a pilot here with all of the 4 major carriers. Yep. And we're doing the same in other markets. But I guess just to wrap up, the most important thing for me is the fact that we've got virtually every large carrier in the world rolling out these kind of services, initially for internal use, for their own internal services. That's a no-brainer. But then to expose them through a standard API, OpenID Connect, and to make it really easy for m-commerce partners, service partners to integrate as well. It's really early days. It's a very crowded market. We don't know how this is going to pan out, but it's really exciting, and we're looking forward to it, so watch this space.
So and it's interesting because you say you're working with governments as well. So GSMA is kind of a broad organization developing standards in community format, and also then working with government. So is the idea then this is kind of to develop? Is it technology standards? Is it working groups, special interest groups? At what level are you going to intend to produce results?
So we usually start with standards, and we do a lot of lobbying. I mean, we have a government and ministerial program in Barcelona that has 187 ministerial delegations that come as well. It's like a shadow event while we're all touring the halls. But we've also done a lot of product work on this, basic product proposition. Yeah. And a little bit in tune with what Karim was saying earlier, we're trying to do this differently, which is difficult as a bunch of telcos. So we're trying to tell people this doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. Get it out there. Yep. Get a user base. Don't look for the perfect monetization scheme, because that's also what a lot of the telcos are doing. Right. Go for the base, the usage, and then see how you can add value.
That's a Silicon Valley way of doing things. Throw it up there and see about monetizing later. But we hear the carriers more and more saying, consistent with what Karim said, is we don't just want technologies. We need to see how that provides business value. So can you explain how that can provide business value without immediate revenues?
So the trick here is actually concentrating on the word value and not revenue. If you look through a revenue filter and you prioritize your internal projects within an operator, this one would get nowhere because you're looking for a rate of investment that would just be surreal. So you've got to talk about adding value. And one of the values you're adding is really in terms of touch points with the customer. Yeah. It's no secret that operators are losing many of the touch points with the customers. They don't make phone calls all day on their phones these days. Millennials are generally using apps, and if you analyze the time that they're using, most of the time they're looking at a different brand. They're using Facebook, they're using WhatsApp, they're using Snapchat, Instagram, whatever it is. So having those kind of touch points with the customer is really important. And we shouldn't forget the power of data as well. We want to be able to collect data as well, but we want to do it responsibly with your permission, and we want to tell you in advance if we're going to share it with anybody else. So we have a set of privacy principles that we've developed as well to try and say, look, there's no point in us just emulating everybody else and then gathering all your data and giving it to other people without letting you know. Yeah. We've got to make sure that we do that in a responsible way as well. It's a challenge. This is literally trying to change our spots.
Yeah, and
it's fun.
I got my next tweet from you there, by the way. It's value, not revenue. It's kind
Absolutely.
of like creating value is the first step towards creating. If you don't create any value, you can't ask for revenue.
It's really difficult to get incremental revenue for a service like this without showing the value first.
So and later on in my presentation, I will also address and adding to that. That's how we see also adding value.
Awesome, because this is kind of the merging of thinking between like the Silicon Valley. .com, the bomb, year 2000, just get eyeballs, worry about money later. Well, that was clearly wrong. But, get money, get dollars right away is also similarly wrong, right? We've got to have some kind of a balance in between the two, where we're going to have to build an audience, provide value, and we're going to have to have some ideas of how we can extract revenue from that later on. But we can't, take either extreme as a good starting point.
Well, I guess the other key point is that in order to do this, we've had to do it top down.
Yep.
If you try and talk to the engineers, the product people low down, this would never see the light of day. So we've had to get a few CEOs to literally say, look, I don't care if you don't think this is going to help my quarterly figures. Right. We're going to do this because it's strategic.
So I've strategically slid the slide advancer under your seat.
That's fair enough.
I meant to extract it. So you got a couple of slides to show us, and maybe you want to walk us through that, and then we'll jump over to Colin's.
Sure.
Keep the session going.
This is just a kind of quick heads up on who we are, because many of you won't know. We represent 800 mobile carriers around the globe. It's all of them, basically. We have another 250 companies that are members. Several of them are in the room here today as well. You see in the middle the kind of principles that we're going for. We have various tools that we're using. The bottom right one is actually our world domination map. I won't go through the colors, but that's the countries that we're currently active in, and it's basically virtually every large country in the world. The nestic thing I can barely pronounce is the grant that we have in the US. That's from the US government. It's an Obama initiative, and that's where we're working with the 4 carriers here. If we go on to the next slide, this was supposedly to ask the question, as Derek asked, he said, so what are we looking for in terms of innovation? Well, in order to make this kind of stuff work, you've got to make it really simple. And that means nothing to remember. It means using things like biometrics. We're doing some work with the FIDO Alliance and others, so that it's really simple and easy to do this. Maybe it's just because we know about you and your context. If I know who you are and I see you making the same transaction from the same place every week for roughly the same amount, maybe I don't need the same level of security. So it's trying to, in that kind of adaptive way, make security less oppressive. Because if all you're getting is constantly asked to revalidate your identity, then people will stop doing it and they won't feel comfortable doing it. So we're looking for innovation in the space, biometrics definitely, but also I think in data analytics as well.
Yeah. Great, interesting. Let's jump over to Colin. I understand you got 4 slides or so for us. And
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me here. And
pleasure.
It's always good to speak with Alex.
Likewise.
And maybe a word about Ooredoo first.
We'll give them a minute to flip it over.
All right. Okay. Anyway, so for those of you that have not heard about Ooredoo, so we are a mobile carrier group in the Middle East, North Africa, Southeast Asia. So currently we're in 16 countries. We have 114 million customers across our operations. We primarily focus in MENA, so Middle East, North Africa, Southeast Asia. Some of the countries, examples that we operate in is Qatar, which is our headquarters. I'm based in Doha. And Kuwait, Oman, and we're also in North Africa, such as Tunisia, Algeria, And in Southeast Asia, we're Indonesia and also Myanmar. Those are our major operations, but we are also have investment in other countries as well, but primarily focusing on the emerging markets. Now, just a quick word on Mobile Connect. We're very glad that we're working with industry peers as well as the GSMA. I think this is a very important initiative for us, particularly because we're operating in the emerging markets. For those of you that are living in very advanced markets such as the US or in Europe, you may already been on Facebook and Google, etc. for such a long time. But for a lot of our customers, the mobile is actually their first instance of getting onto the internet. Now, Alex mentioned that you easily have 60 accounts, and I'm sure for the advancing of our emerging market customers, it will reach that level. But right now, let's not forget one thing: they're not so familiar with Facebook at times, and they're not they're not really trusting a lot of the different organizations because they're not familiar as the advanced market. So we believe the mobile is one of the first very much key for helping them in order to get into the digital world. Now, we have done actually a survey in a couple of our markets, and we try to understand if we can have the mobile become the key for them to access the internet with a lot of their accounts, would they trust it? We have more than 60% of our customers telling us that yes, they would. They would trust their mobile, and it would provide convenience and added value. So it's something that they're already looking at to use their mobile because that's their first instance of the internet. And us, being the carriers, we're trying to nurture the trust that we have with the customers. And we do believe this is a very, very good way of providing access for them. And earlier on, Derek asked a question about value creation. And this one slide that I've put together basically sets it all for us, where the value is. The number one thing, from an Ooredoo perspective, when we look at it, we are also going to be benefiting from using this single sign-on of Mobile Connect, even for our own services. Currently, the services that we have may already have 4 or 5 different passwords that people have set up on the internet, on checking their loyalty points and checking on mobile money, etc., etc. So the first user actually is Ooredoo. And we believe that that is the first strategic reason why we should be supporting this, because we should be the only, we should be the one who get the customer to trust and start using, and that helps them to get on. The second reason is because a lot of people, when they forget about their password, they're scared of providing certain information, then it sort of gives them an added obstacle of not using certain digital contents, whether from us or from our partners. And we don't want to see that. We want to help us and our partners in order to get more revenue, get more transactions going, and we do believe this is one of the key that we can help, which is the lowering the initial starting point. Yeah. And the third point is probably in the future, we do believe that if we start to use the mobile as the key for the digital world, we could, particularly in our markets, we're emerging markets, we can work with a bank, we can work with a government agency, we can work with a lot of the B2B type of services to help them to lower the obstacle for the customers to reach into using their services. So pretty much that's how we see the value. And potentially that's where some of the revenue may come in the future. Yeah. But right now, as Alex mentioned, we're firstly focusing on the value that we can create for ourselves.
Great. So, I think what I'm hearing is that in many ways, the way the app stores for an iOS became a platform, of course, that went to non-operator companies, became a platform that everyone could develop on and build on, and launched a whole bunch of opportunity and creativity. Similarly, providing identity as a platform offers another platform that people can build on and provide a lot of value, and they can create and deliver value. And this is a chance for the operators to play a significant role in that particular value proposition, that platform, right? Absolutely, absolutely. And just to that point, basically we're working with the GSMA on one, the API sets, but we're also in some of our emerging market countries, we're also helping to do the startup incubation. So we work with a set of developers, and we already asked them if there's a Mobile Connect
type of login, would that be of use to them? And we have super positive response already from them, saying that they would love to be able to get on with that.
That's great, because like we heard from some of the multiple previous speakers, so you've got the platform, the technology in place, and a vision of how this can create value and deliver value to developers and other independent parties, but you've also got mechanisms and methods in place for them to easily take advantage of them. So incubators and toolkits and things like that. Are those things from Ooredoo, or is those things part of the GSMA standard that's been delivered to you to use?
I'll answer half of that, and I'll leave that to Alex. But certainly we're supporting the entire Mobile Connect with the industry peer, because we've felt that that is the beauty of it, because it shouldn't be something unique to Ooredoo. Otherwise, it's almost like something that they have to develop.
Right.
Hopefully it's something that the entire telecom industry is using the same API.
Right.
So that's how we believe it should be, and that's what Ooredoo wish to support.
Yep. So this notion of so the developers won't have to develop a separate standard for every different nation that they operate in, but also if you guys operate in one country and there's 3 other operators, make sure everybody's using the same mIdentity solution. But then how do you differentiate from the other operators in those countries? Is that a concern that you have, or one that you've seen?
Well, first of all, maybe we should talk a little bit about how we make that happen, because the first thing we have to do is to be able to discover the right operator.
Yeah.
So you're using a website. We have a centralized lookup, an API exchange that we use.
Yeah.
It's actually based out of a startup here in the Valley. That's how we find the right operator, and then we send the request to them.
Yeah.
We do have SDKs and toolkits. One of the reasons is because even though it's a standard API, every implementation we saw was different.
Yeah.
So we publish SDKs and things to help people check that their reference implementation is the same. We have a developer portal that we try and use to help people as well. We still have problems in that if you're working with operators, typically you're still signing T's and C's for an individual operator.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make that easier with click-throughs as well. But ultimately, at the moment, that's where some of the friction is as well. So making the contractuals as streamlined as the technical is difficult. And really, it's not about the technology. APIs are really easy. I mean, we're talking about a few lines of JavaScript.
Yeah.
It's the business processes in and around them that are quite complex. And that's where we have to spend a lot of time as well.
Is each carrier going to solve that individually, or is that something you would, the business process question, is that something you would solve as a group through the GSMA?
So we're trying to solve it as much as we can centrally, but of course they have different processes and different systems, so inevitably there is some degree of...
Does regulation play a role in those different nations?
Regulation does. So for example, at the moment we're doing a lot of work with, in India, with a population of about 750 million people we cover, but they've had issues about using a lookup in the US. We have the same issue in China, whether things like a telephone number will leave their territory and be sent to a box somewhere else. So we've had to make some local market adjustments. The key point is, for the service providers that we're focusing on, that is really easy. It's a standardized industry. You probably all know it. It's OpenID Connect. Make it easy for them. We try and take some of the complexity. And that's kind of what we're aiming at, so that we don't get the service provider saying what they normally say, which is, if I had to do this for 800 carriers around the world, I'd be negotiating till Christmas. So Christmas 2018. So it's trying to simplify those things as well.
I'd like to echo that point, because Derek, your earlier question is about differentiation. I do believe that this is such a key to have a standardized way to help customer, because it's not the right question to address differentiation. It's much more about helping customer to get easier access and secure. And we do believe that this should be standardized across the industry, because that's not where the point of differentiation is. It's really a point about the services that we provide and the content that we provide afterwards that should be differentiated, not the secure gateway or the way that people can access. This should be gaining global trust rather than differentiation.
I couldn't agree more. And just one other point, because Kareem mentioned mobile money and so did Colin. Some of our operators who have very large user bases in mobile money are simply adding this as an authenticator to it. So instead of starting off with a user base of 0, which we nearly always do, they're just taking it to like 180 million people or something on day one.
So and is it change when they adopt it in mobile money? They already do. Is it changing the service, or is it invisible to the user? It just adds a level of security.
It's security and convenience. I mean, Colin referenced another point, and that is we have a case study from the United Arab Emirates where they did this just for their own call centers, and it reduced the time on every single call because it was just so fast to authenticate. So you know what it costs to run a call center. You know that the cost is how long those calls last. So they actually made a business case just on using it for their call centers, which we hadn't thought of.
So that's kind of, that ties to that's actually saves cost, and on the consumer's perspective has that convenience factor. You guys keep coming back. I hear convenience security, which I think is what it's all about. So that's a great example of convenience and cost savings. What are some other conveniences? So getting more, what does it look like to the user? What are some of the conveniences that this would deliver as a user? So calling the call center is example number one. Any other examples?
Well, for us, I think the convenience is twofold. One is sending from a particular our own services, and so it's a unified experience. That's the convenience. So people don't need to do different things in order to get logged in,
right.
And hopefully that builds up the behavior and lower the sort of the scare factor. That what is this, right? But the second thing is hopefully we can start working with third parties and all of our partners in order to use the same mechanism, and that's another added level of convenience because then everything is almost like a unified experience, yeah. Which is important for our customers.
So if I may as well, the other thing we're going for is if you want a customer to use this multiple times a day, it's got to be quick and easy. So yeah. We're going for, in some cases, a one-click or zero-click experience. Based on, we know you. We know a lot of data about you. For a certain level of authorization, I don't need to ask for your DNA sequence.
Yeah.
I can just basically, I have enough data to trust you.
So it's the right level of security,
It's the right trade-off. And that's what other companies here in the Valley are doing as well, right? It's getting the right level of trade-off between, can I just use your Touch ID or what can I use
it is always
without
like,
forcing that?
You see the Wi-Fi we have here at the conference, like I was adamant, like, no, I don't want a password with high, encryption, pound size, like capitals, and it's like, it's an open network, so why would you put it behind a ridiculous password? The whole concept is use a VPN if you have a sensitive information. So yeah, the right level of security for public access Wi-Fi is,
but convenient, easy to use as well. So that's where we are looking for innovation is, find ways to automatically know more about the customer so we don't have to explicitly ask you, particularly for shared secrets.
Right, and then there's also, so if you repeat and keep doing the same thing, you might say, oh, we don't even need to validate this person, we'll use that essential level of security. Absolutely. But if they now say, wait a minute, I do want, and I popped in, check my balance, the first time I have to authenticate, but every other time it could be automatic. But then I say, now I want to transfer some money, then you might say, oh, wait.
Yeah, so we're dealing with banks as well because they're obvious customers, and most of you have probably got weird little dongles and various apps on your phone you use to authenticate to your bank. Now, clearly they have a higher, as we call it, level of assurance. They go for LOA 3 or 4. But then you can still make it easier. They're perfectly happy right now sending you an SMS one-time password where you have to copy a number and paste it into another box. We can do it better than that.
Very good. So in looking, as we work towards wrapping up, like, this is great to talk about mIdentity as a platform that delivers value first and then looks to revenue second. So let's talk about that revenue second. Like, where is the revenue potential in this long term for an operator?
So I'll take a first stab and then Colin, because he's a real operator, I'm not, I'm an industry association. Where we see most of our operators heading is in the controlled sharing of attributes, user information. Again, it has to be with your permission. And we differentiate from others in saying, we will not only give you a privacy policy, we will give you granular controls that allow you to specify that you will share certain pieces of data with certain types of entities. Now, it's quite clear that you can make money doing that, and there are others already doing it. And then, as I mentioned before, I think data analytics is a fairly obvious one as well. So but you have to be very careful how you do it. If you go for a land grab and get the money, but you compromise your principles, you just lose trust, and then you've lost the game.
So let me challenge you on your first point, because I see where there's value in that, and the carrier can say, oh, we're going to start charging for it to be this platform. But is that the kind of thing where customers will say, well, you should give it to me for free, like as my carrier manage that for free? Or is it something where the carriers will find a way to say, no, this is a value-added service?
To be clear, typically we're not charging consumers for this, of course, that's almost impossible. You're actually exchanging data with other third parties that do see value and are willing to do that.
So if I'm a customer of Bank of America, somewhere in the background, in AT&T, say, as a carrier, somewhere in the background, AT&T is getting some kind of a payment from Bank of America to validate me, to lower their risk and improve my convenience.
Absolutely, and we're working with the credit card franchises in particular because it's no secret they have massive fraud problems. Can you imagine the attributes we can share with them that make it virtually guaranteed that you are not charged a fraudulent transaction somewhere else in the world, somewhere in China while you're in the US? And really simple stuff to do would save them a fortune.
Great. And you had some ideas as well, Colin?
Well, basically, I think Alex covered it very well. So the only thing that we see possibly as a business case is pretty much providing that service for a B2B or a government agency. Because let's not forget that it's costly also to keep the infrastructure and keeping up with all this sort of security upgrade and everything. So hopefully, if this is a viable solution for them, it helps them to lower some costs and it helps them to feel secure for something that they're providing for their customers. So.
Absolutely.
great. You know, so I'm going to wrap up a bit with mIdentity, make a very brief transition, because Kareem introduced, you know, I had a conversation with him at the end about, you know, how the developing world is coming along with innovations and stuff, and Ooredoo was very, very powerful there. I want everybody in the audience to know that you're going to be back on the stage at a different time to talk specifically about Ooredoo. So this was an mIdentity discussion, and Ooredoo will be back. But, you know, as a quick teaser, a sampler, you guys seem to be pretty aggressive in terms of partnering with innovation. In developing worlds in a variety of different countries, do you feel that you're typical or different, and why are you being so aggressive to partner?
Wow, this is a big question.
Yeah. But this is the snapshot. We will talk more later about this. But this is
yeah, but I love that. Basically, I do think that there are some unique opportunities. Certainly, that's why we're very glad to be here. We have a different set of unique challenges when we talk about innovations, but we also do have the benefits of you know, referencing how the advanced markets, such as the US, such as you know, the Europe, how things are working out, so that we can replicate certain models. And we're learning a lot from you know, the industry peers and you know, what everybody else is doing. However, we also do see that there's such an opportunity to come to the emerging markets because number one, the market size is relatively big as well. Yep. It's also advancing and developing in terms of you know, technology and also talents in the markets. And we do realize that the innovations are also growing in a very good and healthy way because of you know, the people getting more and more engaged on the internet. And the most important thing is there's still a big gap of, it's not such a crowded market. So that's why, you know, it's pretty much an early on, almost like a blank sheet. I hate to say blank sheet, but it's not. But it's early enough for a lot of opportunities to be developed, which I can address more at 3 o'clock.
Look forward to hearing that.
All right.
All right. So for both Colin and you guys equally, thanks a lot for participating with us and giving us this insight into the mIdentity. I think it's an interesting platform, and it's a way. You know, there's many ways that carriers can get involved that fit correctly. You know, maybe we're not the best to be the music store or the app store. Some battles are lost, but some battles are still ahead and are strategically winnable for the operators. And I think it's interesting to address those correctly. So thanks a lot for bringing this out for us, Alex and Colin. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colin, thanks a lot.
See you next week in Cape Town.